I give you one chance to say it again. Look me in the eye and finish that sentence.
Clients only. The words hit harder than any lock on the glass door. The manager's voice cut through the quiet hum of keyboards and counting machines. A few heads turned. A young teller froze mid-transaction. At the counter stood a woman in a plain hoodie, calm, hands folded, watching the arrogance unfold. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She simply said, "Mark this branch." 7 minutes later, the same voice that dismissed her would be begging for access because she owned the bank. Morning sunlight spilled through the tall glass windows of Sterling Private Bank, slicing across polished counters and chrome fixtures. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and espresso. It was the kind of space designed to intimidate quietly, every sound softened, every reflection polished until it looked expensive. Customers spoke in lowered tones, glancing at each other like they all knew the rules. Power belonged on one side of the counter. Jordan Clayborne stepped inside alone. No assistant, no suit jacket, no driver waiting at the curb, just a light gray hoodie, dark jeans, and a calm that didn't need permission to exist. She'd spent the morning reviewing loan approvals from her phone, sipping coffee in the car before deciding to stop by the branch unannounced. Her idea of leadership wasn't surprise inspections, it was contact. She liked to see how people were treated when they didn't look important. Behind the main desk sat Claire Matthews, the branch manager. Her blazer was navy, her posture flawless, her expression already practiced for control. She was typing something into her computer when Jordan approached, stopping at the counter with the simple courtesy of someone who belonged anywhere. "Good morning," Jordan said. "I need to make a withdrawal." Claire didn't look up right away. Her eyes moved across the screen, then lifted with a flicker of surprise that hardened too fast. "Do you have an account with us?" "I do," Jordan replied evenly, sliding her card across the counter. Claire took it between two fingers, like she was afraid of fingerprints. She scanned the name J. Clayborne, then frowned. I don't see a personal account under this number. Are you sure this isn't a business card?" "It's both," Jordan said. The manager's lips pressed into a thin line. "We can't process corporate withdrawals at this counter. You'll need an appointment upstairs. Clients only down here." Different. Jordan tilted her head slightly. "I am a client." Claire exhaled through her nose, the universal sign of dismissal. "Ma'am, please, we have procedures. If you don't have an active account, I can't help you." The sentence landed like a gavel. Customers at nearby desks began pretending not to listen. The teller to Claire's right shifted uncomfortably, glancing from Jordan to his keyboard. Jordan didn't move. "Would you like to look again?" she asked softly. Claire gave a tight smile. "You people are always convinced there's been a mistake." That was the moment everything stopped. The casual cruelty, spoken like company policy, sharp enough to silence even the air conditioning hum. A man in a gray suit at the next counter lifted his head. Another woman in line frowned. The trainee teller, Marcus, paused mid-transaction, his hand hovering above the register. Jordan's heartbeat stayed steady. She'd been here before. Different rooms, same arrogance. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she placed her phone on the counter, screen face down, and tapped the side twice. The faint click of recording mode. Claire mistook the gesture for hesitation. "If you're done wasting time, please step aside." Jordan looked directly at her. "Could you repeat what you just said?" "I said clients only." "Good," Jordan murmured. For the record, the manager straightened, offended. "Are you threatening me?" Jordan's tone stayed neutral. "No, I'm documenting a conversation." That was when Marcus spoke quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "Miss Matthews, maybe we should double check." Claire cut him off. "Marcus, please. I know how to do my job." Jordan lifted her phone, pressed one button, and said 6 calm words. "It's happening. Mark this branch for review." Then she slid the phone back into her pocket. The space between them thickened. A faint murmur rippled across the room as the phrase settled "mark this branch." Claire's eyebrows knit. "Excuse me? Who exactly do you think you're talking to?" Jordan's answer was simple. The right department. 7 minutes from now, the glass walls would hold their silence differently. But for now, she waited quiet, patient. The weight of ownership, invisible but absolute. Somewhere in the distance, the printer beeped, as if marking time. The clock above the teller row read 9:16 a.m. The minute hand barely moved, but the atmosphere shifted. You could feel it in the way conversation slowed, how the usual rhythm of cash drawers opening and receipts printing seemed to hesitate. Claire Matthews didn't notice. Or maybe she refused to. She straightened the papers on her desk as if tidiness could restore her sense of control. Jordan stood exactly where she had been, calm, phone in her pocket, hands resting on the counter. She wasn't performing for anyone. She was observing every word, every movement, every silence that chose a side. Claire finally broke the tension. "Ma'am," I've asked politely, "you're disrupting our clients." Her tone sharpened, the voice of someone accustomed to ending conversations, not losing them. Jordan's gaze didn't waver. "Your clients are watching how you treat one." A few of them were. A man near the window lifted his phone discreetly. A mother holding her child in line looked away, embarrassed by the familiarity of the scene. Marcus, the trainee teller, kept glancing at his screen, pretending to type, but on the side monitor, an internal alert blinked. "Branch audit active, HQ monitoring." He swallowed hard. Someone had already pulled the trigger. Claire noticed him freeze. "What are you staring at?" she snapped. "Nothing, Ms. Matthews. Just updating." "Then focus on your work," she hissed, eyes narrowing before turning back to Jordan. "I don't know what game you're playing, but this isn't how business is done." Jordan's reply was almost a whisper. "You're right. This is how accountability is." The phrase didn't sound threatening. It sounded factual, like gravity. Claire blinked, uncertain for the first time. Behind them, the soft chime of the glass doors sounded. A man in a charcoal suit entered, moving quickly, his security badge catching the light. His nameplate read, "A. Whitaker, Compliance Division." He scanned the room, his expression neutral but alert, eyes landing on Jordan first, then on Claire. "Miss Matthews," he said evenly, "is everything all right here?" Claire straightened. "Everything's fine. Just a misunderstanding with this woman." Whitaker's gaze lingered on Jordan. "This woman?" Claire hesitated. "She doesn't have proper authorization for a corporate transaction. I was about to have security escort her out." Whitaker didn't answer immediately. He turned to Jordan. "May I ask your name, ma'am?" Jordan's voice stayed calm. "Clayborne, Jordan Clayborne." Whitaker blinked once, and the silence that followed was louder than any outburst. Around them, the bank seemed to exhale. Marcus's chair squeaked as he leaned back too fast. Even the mother with the child stopped pretending not to listen. Claire frowned, confused by everyone's sudden stillness. "What? Do you—" Whitaker took a slow step back, his tone suddenly careful. "Miss Matthews, would you please step aside from the counter?" Her confusion turned defensive. "Excuse me? Why?" "Because you've just denied service to the CEO of Sterling Bank Group." The words hung there, unreal at first, until the implications settled like dust. The customers looked from one woman to the other, the hoodie and jeans versus the navy suit, and the illusion of hierarchy cracked. Jordan didn't gloat. She didn't even smile. She simply said, "You have 6 minutes left." "One." Claire's face drained of color. "I didn't know." "That's the point," Jordan replied. Her voice was soft, but each syllable landed with precision. "You didn't ask. You assumed." Whitaker cleared his throat, already pulling a tablet from his briefcase. "Ma'am, HQ confirmed the audit. We're logging everything. Would you like to continue here or in the conference office?" Jordan shook her head. "Here is fine. Let everyone see how standards are kept." Wells, the entire lobby had fallen silent now. Claire's coworkers stood frozen. The sound of the clock ticking became unbearable. 9:18 a.m. 2 minutes into a 7-minute reckoning. 9:19 a.m. The hum of the air vents was the only sound left in the lobby. Claire Matthews stood motionless behind the counter, her perfectly rehearsed posture unraveling one blink at a time. A few customers had drifted aside, pretending to check their phones but secretly filming. The young trainee, Marcus, hovered near the printer, unsure whether to breathe or vanish. Compliance Officer Whitaker didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Miss Matthews, he said, we'll need your statement for the record. Everything said or done here is being logged under Corporate Protocol 12B. Record? Claire stammered. But this woman didn't identify herself as. She didn't have to, Whitaker interrupted quietly. You identified yourself. Juan. Jordan remained still, leaning slightly against the counter as if the weight of her composure could steady the entire room. She wasn't there to humiliate anyone, but she wasn't about to rescue them from their own arrogance either. Tell me, she said softly, is that how you speak to every customer who doesn't fit your image of wealth? Claire's voice cracked. No, I just follow policy. Jordan tilted her head. Then your policy needs an update. Whitaker's tablet pinged a message from HQ. He read it quickly, his eyes widening. Miss Clayborne, he said, headquarters confirms. The board has joined the live review. You're clear to proceed. Jordan nodded once. Thank you. Keep recording. She turned back to Claire, her voice calm but weighted. This branch has been on the radar for 6 months. Complaints about selective service, verbal dismissals, clients leaving accounts dormant. I wanted to see if the rumors were true. I know. Claire's face went pale. You set me up? No, Jordan replied evenly. You set yourself up. I just walked through the door. A murmur spread through the room. The customers who had been recording now held their phones lower, more like witnesses than voyeurs. Even the security guard near the entrance stood straighter, unsure whether to intervene or salute. Jordan reached into her pocket and pulled out the same card Claire had dismissed earlier. She laid it flat on the counter, black titanium, engraved with her initials, the company crest embossed above the chip. You said this wasn't a valid account. Claire swallowed hard. I didn't realize. You didn't look, Jordan said. And if you had, you would have seen the executive access code right beneath my name. Whitaker tapped on his tablet again. Miss Matthews, your login credentials have been suspended pending investigation. You'll be escorted to HR after this conversation concludes. The sound that followed wasn't loud, but it was final, the soft chime of Claire's terminal as it automatically signed her out. Her access was gone. Jordan looked at Marcus. Can you process my withdrawal, please? The young teller blinked, startled. Yes, am. He reached for the drawer, his hand steadying as he counted the bills. Every click of the cash tray echoed louder than before, like punctuation marks in the lesson being written across the room. When Marcus handed her the envelope, Jordan met his eyes. Thank you, Marcus. Professionalism matters. He nodded quickly, pride flickering through the tension. Claire stood frozen, clutching the edge of the counter. Miss Clayborne, please, I've worked here 12 years. Jordan's voice was measured, almost kind. Then you should have learned how to treat people in 12 minutes. Whitaker cleared his throat. Ma'am, per procedure, do you wish to issue any immediate directive? Jordan took a slow breath, her tone still quiet. Suspend the branch manager effective immediately. Begin retraining for all client-facing staff. Marcus, send the audit summary to my office when this closes. Yes, ma'am. 1. She slipped the envelope into her bag, turned toward the door, and paused long enough to let the silence settle into memory. 9:21 a.m. 4 minutes left on the clock, but the verdict was already written. 9:22 a.m. The air in the branch had turned heavy, the way air feels before a summer storm thick, waiting. Every sound seemed sharper, the faint click of a camera phone, the shuffle of shoes, the hum of fluorescent lights that no one had noticed until now. Claire Matthews stood behind the counter, her polished composure dissolving. Her fingers twitched near the keyboard that no longer responded to her touch. Across from her, Jordan Clayborne didn't move an inch. She wasn't smiling, not even satisfied. She looked like someone measuring a pulse checking if the system still had a heartbeat worth saving. Whitaker spoke first. Miss Clayborne, the board has confirmed the directive. HR will initiate termination proceedings for the manager pending your sign-off. Jordan didn't take her eyes off Claire. Sign it, she said quietly. Whitaker nodded and tapped the digital document on his tablet. Claire's face drained as her own name appeared under manager Sterling Branch 04. She opened her mouth to argue, but the words came out hollow. Please, Miss Clayborne, this was a misunderstanding. I thought you were... Jordan interrupted with the precision of a scalpel. Someone who doesn't belong? No, your card looked different, and you assumed, Jordan said. The sentence cut through the air, clean and final. Assumption is not policy. Prejudice never hides behind procedure for long. Whitaker turned the tablet toward her. Jordan signed with a single stroke of her fingertip. Effective immediately, he announced. The room went completely still. Even the child near the waiting chairs sensed the shift, clutching his mother's hand as she whispered, "Watch, baby. This is what accountability looks like." Claire's breath caught. 12 years? You can't just end it like that. Jordan looked at her with an expression that was neither cruel nor merciful, just factual. I didn't end it. You did 7 minutes ago when you decided someone's worth before you looked at their account. And Zerrand. Whitaker motioned to the security guard, who stepped forward, not harshly, but firmly. Claire gathered her things, her hands trembling. When she passed Marcus, the trainee, she avoided his eyes. He didn't gloat. He only looked down, typing something quietly into his terminal, his final audit log entry for the morning. Jordan turned to the other employees. No one here is being judged for her mistake. But from this moment forward, every transaction, every greeting, every decision is being recorded. Not to punish, but to protect. The team nodded, subdued but listening. The truth of what had just happened was spreading faster than fear. It was turning into awareness. Whitaker closed his tablet and addressed Jordan formally. The board also asks if you'd like to make a public statement. Oh, Jordan shook her head. No need. The proof speaks for itself. Just release the internal footage to training. She started toward the glass doors. The remaining customers stepped aside as she passed. None of them spoke, but every face carried the same look, a mixture of awe, discomfort, and realization that justice didn't always arrive with sirens or shouting. Sometimes it walked out quietly, holding a withdrawal slip. At the door, Jordan paused and looked back at Marcus. "Send me that log by noon," she said. "Yes, Mom." "Are you no—" Then softer. She added, "And tell HR to consider you for assistant manager." Marcus blinked me. You saw what was wrong and stayed steady. That's leadership. She left before he could answer. Outside, the sunlight hadn't changed, but it felt different, cleaner somehow. Behind her, through the glass, the Sterling Bank logo gleamed across the lobby wall. Beneath it, the motto Jordan had written years ago as a promise to her team still stood. Integrity is the currency we trust. 924A, my 7 minutes exactly. Justice, logged and complete. 9:30 a.m. 30 minutes later, the Sterling Bank branch sat in uneasy quiet. The morning rush had thinned out, replaced by murmurs and glances over glass partitions. The scent of burnt coffee lingered faintly. Something left brewing too long while everyone's attention shifted to the headlines flashing on their phones. The footage was already circulating. A customer's live stream, captioned, "Bank manager denies black woman service turns out, she's the CEO," had reached 500,000 views in less than an hour. The comments flooded in. Poetic justice. That calm, that's power. This is why representation matters. Inside her office on the top floor, Jordan Clayborne didn't celebrate. She sat at her desk, reviewing internal messages, scrolling across the monitor, compliance summaries, audit reports, disciplinary notices. She'd seen viral moments before. They burned hot and died fast. What mattered was what came after. Her assistant, Derek Shaw, stepped in quietly. "Corporate just confirmed the branch lockout is complete," he said. "HR froze Claire's credentials system-wide. And the board wants to release an official statement." Jordan didn't look up. "Draft it. Keep it short. Facts only." "Something like, Sterling Bank enforces zero tolerance for discrimination," Derek suggested. She shook her head. No slogans, just truth. She typed as she spoke. "A client was denied service. Leadership intervened. The issue was corrected. Retraining is underway." Derek hesitated, that's all. "That's enough," Jordan said. "We don't need applause. We need standards." She hit send. The statement would go out to every news outlet before lunch. Downstairs, Marcus was still behind the teller line, now wearing a temporary badge marked Acting Assistant Manager. He kept his focus, greeting customers politely, double-checking every transaction, but beneath his calm was pride quiet, earned, the kind that comes from being seen. An older woman approached his counter. "Was it true?" she whispered, glancing around. "That was her? The CEO?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "And she didn't yell?" He smiled faintly. Didn't have to. Jordan watched from the mezzanine, unseen. It was the moment she valued most, not the firing, not the viral clip, but the shift in posture. The way everyone now spoke a little softer, stood a little straighter, measured their words with care. Fear could spark obedience, but understanding built change. Her phone buzzed. A message from Legal Division. HQ recommends a full diversity and ethics audit across all 200 branches. She replied instantly. Approved. Effective. Today. Across the country, emails began to populate inboxes with new subject lines, mandatory client conduct training, and ethics certification schedule. The system she built was correcting itself not out of panic, but purpose. By noon, Jordan drove past the same branch she'd entered that morning. Through the window, she saw Marcus leading a small team huddle, showing them how to process a new form correctly. No one looked nervous now. They looked accountable. At the red light, she thought of her mother's words, the ones she'd built her company around. Power doesn't make you loud, it makes you responsible. She took a slow breath and looked up at the blue sky, reflecting off the bank's glass facade. The logo gleamed brighter under the midday sun, and beneath it, someone had placed a fresh placard. Integrity isn't taught in policy, it's proven in moments. Jordan smiled faintly, shifted the car into drive, and merged back into traffic. The world wouldn't remember the argument or the insult. They would remember the stillness, the exact 7 minutes where silence became justice. And in that silence, the system learned to listen. 9 a.m., 1 week later. The Sterling Bank headquarters buzzed with an unfamiliar energy, nervous but clean, like air after a storm. Every conference room door was open, every monitor displaying the same headline, Internal Ethics Review Day 1. Employees filed through the marble lobby clutching tablets, their ID badges flashing as security systems scanned each arrival. Jordan Clayborne entered through the side entrance, the same understated hoodie folded neatly under her arm. Today, she wore a navy suit, not for show, but for continuity. Power didn't need costume changes. It needed consistency. Her footsteps echoed evenly against the tile as she crossed toward the glass boardroom. Inside waited 12 regional managers, each from a different branch, some defensive, some genuinely curious. Compliance Officer Whitaker stood by the display wall, his tone calm but clipped. "All field recordings from last week have been reviewed," he began. "We identified 4 instances of procedural bias, 2 confirmed policy violations, and 3 unresolved complaints awaiting verification." No one spoke. The words procedural bias hung heavy, too polite to describe what everyone knew it meant. Jordan took her seat at the head of the table. "Let's start with branch 4, she said. "What did we learn?" Whitaker clicked play on a short clip-grainy footage from a teller cam. Claire Matthews' voice echoed faintly, "Clients only. We don't serve walk-ins like you." The sentence froze mid-frame. Jordan studied it silently for a moment. "That tone," she said, "wasn't policy. It was culture. And culture is leadership." Across the table, one regional director shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, many employees claim they're under pressure to meet elite service standards. Sometimes that leads to misjudgment." "Pressure doesn't cause prejudice," Jordan replied. "It reveals it." A quiet ripple of agreement moved around the table. Jordan glanced toward Marcus, now formally appointed assistant manager at the Sterling downtown branch. He sat among the senior staff for the first time, notebook open, pen steady. "Marcus," she said, "tell them what you noticed that day." He swallowed but didn't hesitate. "People follow the loudest voice in the room," he said. "When Miss Matthews acted certain, everyone else went silent. But leadership isn't volume, it's example." I just didn't want to join the silence. The boardroom stayed still. Jordan nodded. "That's the kind of clarity I expect from every branch." "I know, Silver." She stood and crossed to the window. Below, the city moved commuters, coffee carts, the morning rhythm of people who'd never know what had changed above them. Sterling will not apologize for high standards, she said, turning back. But those standards must apply to behavior as much as finance. We serve trust, not status. Whitaker raised his tablet. Proposal: mandatory ethics recertification for all 4,000 employees, starting today. 3-week completion deadline. I drove muffinta. Approved, Jordan said, and attached this note. Leadership evaluations are part of it. No exceptions. The managers exchanged uneasy glances, but none objected. As the meeting ended, Marcus lingered behind. Miss Clayborne, he said quietly, thank you for giving people like me a chance to learn from it. Jordan smiled, faint but genuine. You didn't learn from it, Marcus. You changed it. Why do Sark? Outside, sunlight spread through the glass atrium, reflecting across the Sterling logo cleaner now. Not because it was new, but because it had been seen. The audit had begun, not as punishment, but as proof that justice wasn't a one-day spectacle. It was a system under renovation, led by the woman who had once been told, clients only. And this time, everyone was listening. 30 days later, the Sterling Bank headquarters no longer buzzed with tension. The same marble floors that once echoed hurried footsteps now carried slower, steadier ones. Conversations were softer but more deliberate. The walls of silence, the kind that used to hide small cruelties behind polite smiles, had begun to crack open. At 8:45 a.m., Jordan Clayborne entered the training hall on the 22nd floor, a banner stretched across the wall. Integrity in Practice, Leadership Renewal Program. Beneath it sat 100 employees, from tellers to regional directors, all dressed in identical gray shirts without nameplates. Status, for once, was equalized. Jordan stepped to the front, no script in hand. Her voice was calm, even, the same measured tone that once disarmed an entire branch. I didn't design this company to make people feel small, she began. But somehow, some of us learned how to use procedure as armor instead of service as purpose. So today, we start again by unlearning that. No one clapped. They didn't need to. The air itself carried the weight of what she meant. A tall man in the second row raised his hand. Miss Clayborne, how do we fix what people already think of us? The public still sees Sterling as cold. Jordan nodded. Then warmth becomes our advantage, not a slogan and act. Every decision from now on must pass one test. Would you say it the same way if no one looked like you on the other side of the counter? If not, it fails. A quiet murmur of agreement moved through the room. At the back, Marcus observed from the tech booth, coordinating the live broadcast to every branch in the country. His camera framed Jordan against the Sterling emblem behind her, an image that would later circulate in company training titled The Day Standards Changed. One, Jordan continued, Claire's incident wasn't an isolated failure. It was a mirror. I saw how easily systems protect appearances instead of people. That ends today. She paused, scanning the room. Some of you may not like what comes next, but fairness isn't comfortable. It's consistent. Whitaker, standing near the side aisle, distributed tablets displaying the new Client Equity Protocol policy Jordan had written herself. It replaced premium service tiers with a universal standard of care. Same tone, same speed, same respect. Starting next week, she announced, every client interaction, no matter the amount, attire, or accent, will be reviewed not just for accuracy, but for dignity. Someone in the front row whispered, that's a lot to monitor. Jordan heard it. Then let it be a lot to live up to, she said simply, because the cost of arrogance is always higher than the cost of attention. Where crease thing, the sentence lingered long after she finished speaking. People began taking notes, not out of obligation, but realization. When the session ended, Jordan walked toward Marcus, who was packing up cables. How'd it sound? She asked. He smiled. Different. Honest. Good, she said. Send the recording to all branches by noon. As she turned to leave, Marcus called out, Ma'am, one more thing. People online are calling what you did at the bank the 7-minute turnaround. It's trending. Waiter, so when? Jordan stopped, a faint smile touching her face. 7 minutes? Yes, ma'am, they timed it. She thought for a moment. Then make it mean something. Rename the scholarship fund after it. Every year, we'll sponsor 7 minutes of someone else's chance education, housing, whatever they need. Marcus nodded, eyes bright. Yes, Mom. Jordan walked out of the hall, sunlight catching her steps through the glass corridor. The city below moved on, unaware that a quiet revolution in leadership was unfolding above it. One that didn't shout, didn't boast, but rebuilt an empire on something rarer than power. Respect. And this time, it was bankable. 1 year later, Atlanta's skyline shimmered under the noon sun, but the newest building in the financial district didn't carry a name in gold. Instead, its glass facade bore 4 words etched in clean steel. Integrity is the currency. The Sterling Bank Ethics and Leadership Center Jordan Clayborne's final project had officially opened. Inside the auditorium, the energy was different from any grand opening Jordan had ever attended. No champagne, no velvet rope, no press lines. Just community leaders, scholarship recipients, and employees. Some who had once feared losing their jobs, now sitting together at equal tables. A banner stretched across the stage. The 7-minute scholarship, one decision can rewrite a system. I so way no. The crowd rose when Jordan entered, but she waved the applause down. She didn't crave recognition. She wanted accountability to feel normal. Thank you for being here, she began, her voice amplified through the hall, but still intimate. A year ago, a mistake in one branch became a mirror for all of us. What mattered wasn't the firing, it was the rebuilding. Cools now. Behind her, a screen displayed footage from the training archives. Employees greeting clients of every background, team huddles replacing rigid hierarchies, the new equity counter that tracked fairness metrics instead of revenue. Jordan continued, we learned that systems don't change through punishment. They change through proof. Proof that professionalism and humanity aren't opposites. Proof that silence can either protect injustice or document it. I made trid. The audience listened closely, some nodding, some quietly tearing up. From the front row, Marcus, now regional operations director, watched with quiet pride. He'd been promoted twice since that morning at the branch. His nameplate now read Marcus Lee, Ethics and Service Division. When Jordan caught his eye, he gave a small nod. The kind that said, we kept the promise. Jordan turned toward a group of young interns in the back. You may never face what I did, and I hope you don't. But if you do remember this, calm isn't weakness, it's strategy. Respect isn't optional, it's the baseline. And silence, only powerful if you know when to break it. Applause filled the room, not the loud, performative kind, but slow, genuine grounding. After the ceremony, journalists gathered outside. One asked, Miss Clayborne, how does it feel to be called the woman who changed banking culture in 7 minutes? Jordan smiled faintly. I didn't change banking, she said. I reminded it what it was supposed to serve people. She stepped aside to let a young woman approach the podium. The first 7-minute scholar, Alana Brooks, a business student from Chicago. Because of this program, Alana said, voice trembling, I'll be the first in my family to graduate without debt. And I promise I'll run my future company like you run your bank, with grace and receipts. Laughter rippled through the room, but Jordan's eyes softened. She thought back to that morning, the counter, the insult, the stillness before the storm. Outside, news cameras panned across the new center's glass wall, where a quote from her final board address was etched beneath the logo. Justice isn't loud, it's consistent. As the event ended, Jordan stood alone near the entrance, watching employees greet guests with the quiet professionalism that had become Sterling's hallmark. No one bowed, no one whispered her name. That was how she wanted it. When a system truly works, its creator disappears into it. Her driver waited by the car, door open. Before stepping in, she looked back one last time at the building, its reflection, catching the sunlight like a promise kept. What began as 7 minutes of humiliation had become a blueprint for integrity replicated across industries, taught in universities, and whispered in boardrooms whenever power forgot its purpose. And as the doors closed behind her, Jordan Clayborne smiled, knowing the legacy wasn't her name. It was the standard. 2 months after the opening of the Sterling Leadership Center, the echoes of that 7-minute reckoning had stretched far beyond the walls of banking. They had crossed industries, aviation, hospitality, education. Executives who once dismissed Jordan Clayborne's integrity model were now borrowing her language for their own board memos. Equity review, dignity protocol, real-time audit. What began as a scandal had matured into a blueprint. On a Thursday morning, Jordan sat at her office overlooking downtown Atlanta. No marble, no gold fixtures, just clean lines, oak bookshelves, and sunlight spilling across files marked New Initiatives. The phone buzzed. It wasn't a client or a journalist. It was a call from the White House's Office of Public Policy. "Miss Clayborne," the voice said, "we'd like to invite you to chair a federal advisory group on ethical standards in corporate governance. It's time the system caught up to what you've already proven works." Jordan paused, leaning back in her chair. "I'll accept on one condition," she said. "We don't turn it into a headline. We turn it into training." The official laughed softly, spoken like someone who understands power. After the call, Jordan walked down to the center's ground floor. The atrium buzzed with visitors, students, nonprofit leaders, bank interns, all attending workshops titled Accountability as Architecture and Silent Power, The Ethics of Calm. Every wall bore photographs of ordinary moments turned extraordinary. A teller opening a door for a customer, a manager kneeling to help an elderly client sign a form, Marcus leading a team meeting with quiet confidence. Jordan stood beside one of the panels, an image of herself in that now legendary hoodie captured mid-silence at the counter. Underneath, the inscription read, "When you own the system, you don't have to raise your voice." Wifeful. She never authorized that quote, but she didn't erase it either. It was true enough. A young employee approached, nervous but eager. "Ms. Clayborne, I'm starting my first week at Sterling. Everyone keeps talking about the 7-minute code. Is it real?" Jordan smiled. "It's real, but it's not about me. It's about what you do when no one else is watching." The young woman nodded, as if storing the phrase for later. Outside, the city moved in its usual rhythm taxis, vendors, commuters. But here, inside this glass and steel center, something quieter pulsed. Accountability without fear. Jordan knew that was the true legacy, making fairness feel normal, not radical. Later that afternoon, she met with Marcus in the courtyard cafe. He was reviewing proposals for expanding the ethics audit to small businesses. "You really think this model works outside Sterling?" he asked. Jordan sipped her tea. "If it can work in a bank, the place people trust, least it can work anywhere." "In Duvering," Marcus chuckled. "You ever miss the drama? The cameras? The chaos?" Jordan looked out across the skyline. "Drama fades. Systems remain. We fix those." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Birds flitted between the nearby trees planted along the walkway, each one named for an employee who had upheld the company's new code. One of the plaques bore Claire Matthews' name too. Jordan insisted on it. The inscription read, "Lesson learned, legacy shared." Marcus noticed it and smiled. "You even forgave her." Jordan shook her head. "I didn't forgive her. I folded her story into the standard. That's how we remember." When she left the cafe, the sun was setting, painting the city in amber light. She paused at the curb as her driver pulled up. Across the street, a teenager was helping an elderly man who dropped his wallet. No one filmed it, no one clapped. That, Jordan thought, was the sound of real progress. No applause, no spectacle, just the quiet echo of a better culture repeating itself. One decent act at a time. 7 minutes had started it, but integrity, true integrity, was what kept it going. 18 months later, the 7-minute model was no longer a Sterling initiative. It had become an industry benchmark. Universities taught it under ethics management courses. Airlines adapted it to train flight crews. Even hospitals adopted parts of it, replacing rote customer service slogans with something far simpler. Respect is regulation. Jordan Clayborne never trademarked the phrase. She didn't want ownership of an idea meant to be shared. Instead, she created open source frameworks, step-by-step guides for conflict resolution, bias interruption, and accountability audits free for any company that dared to self-correct. On a brisk February morning, she found herself walking through the doors of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in Washington, D.C. The event banner read, "Corporate Integrity Summit, Building Systems That Last." Journalists lined the hallway, whispering as she passed. Jordan's presence still carried that paradoxical energy, quiet yet magnetic. Inside the auditorium, 1,000 executives filled the seats. Some had once mocked her for making feelings a business metric. Now they took notes before she even spoke. When the moderator introduced her, the applause was restrained, not because of disinterest, but reverence. She stepped to the podium with the calm precision that had defined her career. "People often ask me how long it takes to change a system," she began. "The answer depends on what you're measuring. If you measure headlines, it takes a day. If you measure trust, it takes as long as it takes to prove consistency. Every hour, every branch, every voice that refuses to look away." She let the silence sit. No slides, no dramatic pauses, just truth. We learned at Sterling that fairness isn't sentimental, it's structural. You can't outsource ethics to HR or bury accountability in annual reports. You build it into the architecture, into the logins, into the training, into the paychecks. Cameras clicked. Executives leaned forward. "And when someone asks why it matters," Jordan continued, "remind them, prejudice is expensive. Arrogance costs more than empathy ever will." The crowd erupted, not with cheers, but with that soft, collective sound of realization. The kind that rewrites notes and redrafts policies overnight. After the panel, a reporter caught up to her in the hallway. "Miss Clayborne," he asked, "how do you feel knowing your 7-minute rule is now global policy material?" Jordan smiled faintly. "It's not a rule," she said. "It's a reminder. If a system can humiliate in seconds, it must also be capable of correcting itself just as fast." Back in Atlanta, Marcus watched the broadcast from the Sterling Leadership Center. The camera cut to Jordan's closing words, steady, simple, almost like a benediction. "Audit everything, including your assumptions." He turned to his new interns, who were preparing to launch Sterling's first youth ethics lab. "That's the whole model," he said. "No secrets, no showmanship, just transparency." Later that evening, Jordan returned to her hotel. Her assistant had left a note on the desk beside a cup of tea. "From the board, 12 new banks requesting implementation guidance. Congratulations." She read it, smiled, and wrote beneath it in pen. "Congratulations means nothing. Implementation means everything." Then she closed her notebook, looked out the window at the quiet city lights, and exhaled. Justice had once been a 7-minute story. Now it was a standard measured in systems, in policies, in people who had learned that silence, when used right, could be the loudest instrument of all. Jordan didn't need to trend anymore. The movement no longer needed her face. It had its own pulse, steady and sustainable. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to rest. 2 years later, Jordan Clayborne returned to the place where everything began. The Sterling downtown branch, once the stage of humiliation, now a symbol of reform, looked entirely different. The glass doors had been replaced with wood and brass, warmer and human. The old marble counter was gone too. In its place stood an open circle of low desks where clients and tellers sat at eye level. No barriers, no hierarchy. A young greeter smiled as she entered. "Welcome to Sterling," he said, unaware of who she was. "Would you like to open an account or speak with a manager?" Jordan smiled. "A little of both, actually." The greeter led her to the new branch manager's office, Marcus Lee. His door was open, like always. He was mid-conversation with a client, but waved her in as soon as he saw her. "You didn't warn me you were coming," he said. "I wanted to see it as a customer," she replied. Marcus chuckled. "Then you'll have to wait your turn. We actually get a line now, but for the right reasons." Jill?" Jordan looked around. The space radiated ease. Clients laughed softly with staff. The walls displayed framed stories, not ads, but testimonials. They helped me save my home. They treated me like I belonged. The transformation wasn't cosmetic, it was cultural. She walked over to the teller line. A woman in her 50s helped an elderly client fill out a form, her tone patient, voice low but kind. Jordan recognized the nameplate, C. Matthews. Claire looked up, startled for a moment, then stood quickly. Miss Clayborne. Jordan raised a hand, gently. Relax. You're doing good work. Claire nodded, breath steadying. I wanted to thank you, she said quietly, for not ending my story when you could have. Jordan studied her for a moment. I didn't save your job, Claire. You did. I just gave you a reason to want to. Behind them, the branch hum carried a rhythm that hadn't existed 2 years ago. A rhythm of efficiency without fear. Marcus joined them, carrying a thin folder. We're launching a new pilot, he said. A community microloan program. No credit checks, just mentorship and accountability. Jordan smiled. You're rewriting the rules faster than I can approve them. He shrugged. You taught us the rulebook isn't the goal. The people are. They walked together to the center of the lobby where a bronze plaque stood embedded in the floor. The inscription read, This branch operates on one principle. No one gets smaller here. Jordan ran her fingers lightly over the engraved letters. She remembered the day those words had been born not in a strategy meeting, but in silence during the longest 7 minutes of her life. A few customers recognized her now. One whispered her name. Another asked to shake her hand. She smiled but waved them off gently. It's your branch now, she said. That's the point. Wake. Before leaving, she stopped by the front desk and wrote a short note on company stationery. Marcus picked it up after she left. It read, Audit, compassion, the same way you audit cash. Both are currency. Outside, the afternoon sun reflected on the glass, turning the word sterling into a shimmer across the pavement. Jordan paused before stepping into her car. The same street where she had once been dismissed now mirrored her reflection across every window. For a moment, she didn't see a CEO. She saw an ordinary woman who refused to raise her voice and still rebuilt an empire. 7 minutes had exposed a system, 2 years had redeemed it. And now she was ready to walk away, not to leave power behind, but to leave it in better hands. 3 years later, the city skyline had changed again. New towers, new players, but one name still anchored the horizon, Sterling. Yet inside its glass walls, a quiet transition was unfolding. Jordan Clayborne was stepping down as CEO. There were no headlines, no farewell gala, just an early morning meeting in the boardroom where it had all begun. 12 chairs, a pot of coffee, and sunlight stretching across the conference table like a quiet witness. Marcus Lee sat opposite her, now executive director of global operations. The years had added calm to his voice, the kind earned from hard work rather than inherited authority. I still think the board would have approved another 5-year term, he said. Jordan smiled faintly. I didn't build this to keep it. I built it to survive without me. Across the room, Whitaker adjusted his glasses. The Ethics Council voted unanimously to preserve your governance model permanently. No future CEO can amend it without full audit review. Good, Jordan replied. That means the standard outlives its architect. Silence filled the room, a respectful, reverent kind. For a moment, everyone remembered the day that started all this. A 7-minute confrontation that became corporate legend. Jordan reached into her folder and pulled out a slim envelope. This is the final policy revision I'll sign, she said. It's not about finance, it's about people. Marcus took the paper and read aloud. Article 12, Leadership Transition Ethics. Every successor inherits the obligation to serve, not to rule. Power is a contract, not a crown. He exhaled. The words landing heavier than most legal clauses ever could. You wrote that? Jordan nodded. After watching too many systems fall apart, the moment the founder steps out, I don't want a monument. I want momentum. Whitaker smiled softly. You've already got both. The meeting ended quietly. No applause, no flash photography, just the sound of pens capping and chairs sliding back. As Jordan gathered her things, Marcus walked her to the elevator. You really won't reconsider? He asked. She shook her head. The best proof of leadership, she said, is leaving when everything still works. They reached the lobby. Employees had gathered, hundreds of them, forming 2 lines from the elevators to the front door. No one spoke. No one was told to. They simply stood as she walked between them, a silent corridor of gratitude. Halfway through, Claire stepped forward from the crowd, holding a small box. For you? She said quietly. Inside was the old Sterling badge, tarnished but polished clean. The same one Jordan had handed over to Whitaker during that first audit. Jordan's fingers brushed the cool metal. "You kept it," Claire nodded. "It reminded me that accountability isn't the end of a career. It's the start of character." Jordan smiled. "Then keep it again. Pass it down someday." At the doors, Marcus turned to her one last time. "What now?" Jordan looked beyond the glass toward the city she'd helped rewire, one principle at a time. "Now I consult, teach, maybe disappear for a bit." He grinned. "You disappearing? Unlikely." She shrugged, eyes glinting. "True. I'll just change the view." Outside, the air carried that familiar hum of morning buses, footsteps, the rhythm of a system that finally knew how to self-correct. As she stepped into the waiting car, Jordan looked back once at the Sterling logo gleaming across the entrance. Beneath it, the inscription she'd written years ago still caught the light. "Justice doesn't need witnesses, it needs maintenance." The doors closed softly behind her. Power, at last, had learned humility. And leadership had learned how to let go. 6 months after her resignation, the world had almost stopped saying her name. And that was exactly how Jordan Clayborne wanted it. The headlines had moved on, the think pieces had slowed, and Sterling Bank functioned perfectly without her in the building. There were no scandals, no culture backslides, just consistency. That was the legacy she'd hoped for. Not permanence, but predictability, integrity, running quietly in the background, like good code. She now lived just outside Savannah, in a renovated farmhouse, surrounded by magnolia trees and morning fog. The walls were lined with books, not awards. No plaques, no trophies. The only framed item sat above her writing desk. The first draft of Sterling's ethics charter, marked up in red ink and coffee stains. Each morning, she brewed tea and read the audit reports sent automatically to her inbox. Old habits die hard. She never interfered, just watched. And every time she saw the line, "0 incidents reported," she smiled, not from pride, but peace. One morning, a knock sounded at her door. When she opened it, Marcus stood there, wearing the same quiet confidence he'd once borrowed from her. "Didn't think I'd find you off the grid," he said, grinning. Jordan gestured him inside. "You always do. Sit down before the tea cools." They sat by the window overlooking the orchard. The conversation moved easily. Updates about the scholarship fund, the expansion of the leadership center, the next wave of ethics fellows. But then Marcus pulled a folded letter from his pocket. "It's from the Department of Commerce," he said. "They're establishing a national award for ethical leadership. They want to name it after you." Jordan exhaled slowly. "They shouldn't," he laughed. "You're the only person I know who could turn down an award for honesty." "It's not that," she said, setting down her cup. "If they name it after me, people will chase the name instead of the behavior. Let them call it something ordinary. Let it blend in. That's where real ethics lives, in what no one notices." Marcus studied her for a moment. "You really are done, aren't you?" "I'm not done," she said softly. "I'm replaced, and that's the goal." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fog burn off under the rising sun. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang steady, familiar, indifferent. Marcus eventually stood. "You know," he said, "people still talk about those 7 minutes." Jordan smiled faintly. "Then they haven't learned the lesson yet. The point was never the 7 minutes, it was the 7 million that came after." He laughed, nodded, and left her to the quiet she'd earned. When he was gone, Jordan stepped out onto the porch. The air smelled of rain and pine. She looked down at her phone. No missed calls, no emergencies, just a single notification from Sterling HQ. "Monthly audit complete, 100% compliance." She deleted it, satisfied. In the distance, a car engine started. A bird took flight, and life went on, unremarkable, accountable, steady. Jordan Clayborne smiled to herself, a woman finally unburdened by power, but still defined by purpose. She picked up her old leather notebook and wrote a single line before closing it for good. "Integrity is quiet because it no longer needs to prove itself. Why do?" Then she turned off her phone, set the kettle to boil again, and disappeared back into the rhythm of an ordinary morning. the kind she had spent a lifetime designing systems to protect. No applause, no cameras, just the sound of a world working the way it should.